Hello, and welcome to or back to my channel. I'm Kit, your friendly feminist cat lady spinster, and today we are going to talk about strong, successful male. So, for anyone unaware, Strong Successful Male claims to be a male improvement channel, though per the uploads, it's actually a Women Are Bad channel. I watched a few of his videos, but the one that stuck out to me was posted December 21st. A woman wrote an article, 5 Things That Make Women Hate Men, and somehow he took that and turned it into, they hate guys and want to make sure everyone is warned. The thing is, most guys are not like that. I was unsurprised with what the video turned out to be, but first I want to talk about the title. They hate guys and want to make sure everyone is warned makes it sound as though the author and a friend wrote this and decided to tell the world why they hate men and to be on the lookout for this typical male behavior. When in reality, the author, judging from this and other articles she's written, very much does not hate men and was simply curious about how a woman gets to the point of hating an entire sex. She also did an article about what makes men hate women, which I don't think this guy is going to cover. And let's not overlook how mocking the thumbnail is. Women are always whining about nothing, right? Anyway, let's dive in.
So for today, I'm going to give an article titled 5 Things That Make Women Hate Men. And guys, this article, to absolutely no surprise, is written by a woman.
And what is that supposed to mean? Is it also of absolutely no surprise that she wrote an article titled 6 Things That Make Men Hate Women?
And she's going to go through this whole thing about things that make these days gals, in fact, hate men. And this is obviously going to be based on, obviously, different women that she's known. They've gone through bad experiences. But here's the thing, guys. When it comes to the word hate, that's obviously the extreme case, very strong word. So someone has to go through a lot of bad experiences to get to that point, okay? And I'm not going to deny in any way, shape, or form that there aren't some bad men out there, some really bad apples. Absolutely. Otherwise, we wouldn't have prisons filled max capacity with a lot of guys that are like that, amongst many that are out there and about. And I'm sure you guys, when you were younger in school, high school, you knew some guys in your class that you could just tell. These guys are going to be in prison one day, as well as just guys who are just often lowlives in general. But to put all of us in that category is ridiculous.
He's taking this article very personally.
And you always have to ask, when a woman reaches the point that she says she actually hates guys, I mean, really means it, I like to know what experience she's had, particularly the ones that have obviously had relationships.
This might be uncharitable of me, but I've already watched this video, and I think he just wants to know why a woman might hate a man so he can turn around and find some way that she is at fault.
And oftentimes you find, as you're going to see in this article, she talks about things like trauma and abuse and all sorts of things you can connect there. And nobody should have to go through that. I'm going to make this abundantly clear, okay? But the thing is, and this has to be addressed, when you see the same people get involved with guys that do those types of things, one after the other, yes, what they're doing is obviously wrong. Okay, we're not going to deny that. But also, the woman has to have some accountability too.
You hear that, ladies? You have to take accountability for being abused.
She's obviously drawn to those types of guys. So while I don't want anybody getting harmed mentally, physically, or psychologically, also, there has to be some accountability there that, hey, she keeps picking these wrong types of guys. And in this article, you're going to see the woman even addresses that, oh, that's what guys always say, that it's her fault for choosing them. Well, that's part of the deal. Anybody can make a mistake like that once when you're younger and don't know any better. The same way guys can get involved with a gal that just completely just is awful to them one time. But when the guys keep picking the same type of women, it's also the guy's fault. And I always call guys on that.
So I'm just going to stop him right here and say that while it's great, he sets the bar at the very lowest minimum of saying no one should be psychologically or physically or in any way abused, you should also not blame people for being abused.
So, but anyhow, I've gone on a little too much here in the intro. I'm going to get into this, guys. I'm going to jump in here and add my 2 cents along the way because it is just so extreme and ridiculous.
There is nothing extreme or ridiculous about developing an aversion to a sex because you've experienced trauma at the hands of multiple members of said sex. I do not agree with holding one sex accountable for the actions of 1 or even 10 people of that sex, but this is really rich coming from a man who makes a profit off painting women as awful people not even worthy of human consideration. It is totally fine, from his videos, for a man to hold a grudge, for a man to think women are untrustworthy, for a man to do anything except apparently say they hate women. Apparently that's where he draws the line. Does he not understand that with the videos he posts, he's furthering the idea in some people's minds that women are inherently bad and not fully humans, cannot be trusted, etc., etc.? I think he's more intelligent than that. I think he does know what he's doing. And I don't understand how he could see this article with a woman talking about how like her trauma and abuse has led her to hate men, and he's like, you know what? This needs to be a video about how awful women are that they would hate men.
She says, yes, there are a lot of women who have decided to write off the male gender. Here's what makes that happen. She says, starts out saying, in a conversation with a friend of hers, her friend said, I hate men, my friend said, as she sipped her coffee across from me. I don't think I could ever see one as a person again. Well, her friend must have some pretty bad experiences to reach the point of that much venom towards all men. Because most men are not like that. Most men are actually good guys.
Right. So where is this disclaimer in your stories about women? You know, the one where you say, this story was sent to me by a subscriber. It's their own personal experience and does not represent all women.
Question is, do they want the good guys? I was not surprised. Like many women who dropped out of the dating scene, her experiences are filled with trauma, disgusting behavior, and people calling her entitled for it all. Eventually, she decided the juice just wasn't worth the squeeze. Well, does that sound familiar to anybody?
So I saw some comments saying that she stole that phrase from the manosphere. I don't know why it matters, but that phrase is much older than that.
Moreover, she took things a step further than that typical gal who just decides that dating's not for her. She actually started to hate men. For all they put her through, it's a common thing. Well, that's a problem when someone reaches the point they actually are saying they hate them.
Yeah, there's a fine line here. You can dehumanize people, but you can't say you hate them.
Okay, and if she'd been through so many bad experiences and trauma and stuff like that, which we can use our imagination when she's talking about, then that is unfortunate. I don't want anybody to go through that. Well, it's time to start seeking out some therapy and some counseling. Because just going through your life, obviously damaged like that, and then just going around hating everybody.
Well, I do agree that she needs therapy, but she does not hate everyone. Men are not the whole world.
Not a good place to be. Says, ever wonder what makes a woman hate men? It's mostly a reactionary issue. No one gets born, wakes up at random, or says, I'll hate these people here. So you might be wondering, what's with all the man-hating? Here are the most common reasons why I've seen it happen. And she says, don't worry, I'm going to write a similar article about how men become misogynist. Well, of course she's going to write that.
What does, of course she did mean? Did you read it?
She says the misandrist in question had a really, really abusive partner or had a string of traumas related to men. There you go. Without a doubt, the most common reason for women to end up with an aversion to men is domestic issues. This is particularly true if they end up getting stuck in the cycle of dumping one guy like that and then ending up with another bad relationship immediately after. Right there, what'd you just say? A cycle of dumping one guy who's like that and then ending up in another bad relationship immediately after. Okay, now, again, no one should be in those types of situations, I agree.
But
However, if she is willingly having one guy who's awful, all sorts of abuse and things like that, you can use your imagination, and then dumps him and immediately gets in a relationship with the same type of guy, she has some blame here.
is he aware that this is like saying, well, you made them hit you?
Okay, obviously she's drawn to and attracted to those types of guys, or maybe she had a dad that was that way, or she feels that's all she's worth, but at the end of the day, that's on her partially. We have to take responsibility for our actions. If this was a guy complaining that he ended up with the same types of women all the time, and he kept ending up with the same types and didn't take a look and realize he was going for the same types, I would be on his butt. I'd give him a hard time about that because he kept choosing the same wrong types.
How does he not understand the difference between a relationship that wasn't a good fit for you and an abusive relationship?
So there has to be some accountability here, okay? There aren't just these sweet innocent victims that have no say in what happens. There are a lot of bad apples out there, and it doesn't take a genius to see them for who they are.
So by this logic, wives that were murdered by their husbands knew that the murder was coming because, of course, abusers walk around with abuser floating above their head.
And mentioning that she immediately had to go into another relationship. What she needed immediately was maybe some therapy.
I am glad that he advocates for therapy instead of treating it as something shameful that should be avoided, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he's trying to blame a victim for her own abuse.
Having those bad things happen over a long period of time, multiple people of the same gender will eventually condition you to see all men as potential like that. I'm watching what I say here on YouTube, guys. At times you might start viewing all the people of that gender as your abuser. Some women are even resentful, wondering why no one helped them. Well, you got to ask for help. You got to help yourself as well. Okay, I'm damaged. I got problems. I'm going to admit that. Admitting you got a problem is the first step. And some therapy, figuring some things out. Figuring out why you keep being attracted to and bringing into your life these types of guys. And also things about having boundaries and standing up for yourself. These are important things. But just to dismiss all men as the bad guys and hate on them, that's just crazy. That's making you, in a way, just as bad as the guys that did this stuff to you because now you're becoming a nasty person.
Just because one has been abused does not mean they will become an abuser.
Because believe me, by and large, most guys are good guys and wouldn't do any of the things mentioned here.
I wish I had your faith in that, but I've been reading the comments on some of your videos.
She said, what makes this worse, now wait for this, is the nice guys who tend to treat women who are DV survivors. Sadly, I've seen a lot of this in the comments on my other stories, which just proves how common it is. This occurs when men smirk smugly and say, that's what you get for chasing the wrong men.
So he decided to prove her right by smirking smugly and saying, this is what you get for chasing the wrong men? Okay, interesting choice.
Yes, guys do say that, and I say that is part of the problem, part of the issue. They do choose these same types over and over again, and you have to take accountability for your bad actions, for your mistakes. But also, that doesn't give these guys a free pass to behave in a way which she's describing, guys that are abusive and all that.
It's really interesting that he's chosen to minimize the abuse and just kind of foist it off as, well, I mean, it's your problem. Just go to therapy and figure out how to pick a good man, rather than talk about the men who think it's okay to abuse women.
Real talk, when this is how a DV is treated by men, how can you blame women for refusing to date them? Moreover, how can you blame women for hating men after being blamed for the actions of someone else? Well, they're grown. Yes, the actions which he talks about, and you can use your imagination, are terrible. But
there is no but.
Not all guys are like that.
What do you think would happen if I went into your videos and said, but not all women are like that?
And she has to take action to realize, I make a mistake by keep choosing these guys. That's my fault. It's not my fault for what happened to me, but it's my fault for choosing these type of guys. And I'm going to get me some therapy and some help so I can screen better. That's all.
So therapy isn't a cure-all. It can absolutely help, and I totally recommend it, but it's not going to erase all the memories or the trauma. And for that matter, do we know she has not been to therapy?
Personally, I can understand wanting to walk away from men if all you experienced is pain. Other women watch others suffer as a result of the men in their lives. A good friend of mine low-key hates men because of what she saw in her home. Her mother ended up having 2 sons and a daughter with a husband who refused to work, didn't help out in the house, and put her down on a daily basis. Well, he's a bum. If his wife, the mother of this girl she's talking about, did nothing, no work, nothing, never lifted a hand, always put her down, he's a bum. He's a piece of crap. And she'd have a right to leave him. And some people say, well, maybe she couldn't leave him. Well, there is always a choice. It's not like she depended on him financially because he didn't have a job.
How do you get to be an adult and still have that simplistic black and white view of the world?
But not... Again, all guys are like that.
So by writing her reasons men hate women, did she say that all women are like that?
But the friend of mine watched her mother die an early death. She killed herself when her friend was turned 18. The father walked off and let her take care of her younger brother, who eventually ended up in jail for issues. Well, that's terrible. It really is. But again, just because her dad was that way, and her dad was a piece of garbage, doesn't mean that all other guys are that way.
It is astounding to me that what he took away from that is, but not all guys are that way.
And notice that her brother ended up just like the dad. Since then, she associates men with what her father did. She never had a date, never ever wanted to bother with a boyfriend. I've never quite seen a woman who avoids men as much as she does. She needs some therapy. A lot of women learn to hate men because of the way men talk about them. Too many men don't realize the damage they do to a woman when they talk about women negatively. When women hear that their value hits the wall at 30 and that they are wasting their lives on a career, it's not attractive, it's quite repulsive. You saying women don't talk about us in a bad way?
Actually, the most talking about men in a bad way that I've ever come across is from other men.
Let's be honest here. And this whole thing, these are extreme cases. Yes, there are guys that say a woman hits the wall at 30 years old, that's it, they're done. Which, in my opinion, is ridiculous, okay? A woman's prime is in her late teens and 20s. That's when she looks the best. But believe me, I know plenty of women that are damn good looking in their 30s, 40s, and 50s if they take care of themselves. Are they the same as they were in their 20s? No. But they still look darn good and can get guys.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but a woman's life does not revolve around getting guys.
So that part is just... too extreme, too ridiculous, or the fact that they're wasting their lives on a career. If women choose career over family, it's going to be harder for them down the road, and as I've known many have, but at the end of the day, it's theirs. But come on here, she's using extremes here just to prove her point.
No. She's using extremes because it is an extreme that leads to someone hating an entire sex.
She said every girl had a moment where she gets into an argument about a guy who categorically disparages them. Every time women hear men talking about them like their sociopathic sex toys, they lose a little more faith in men. Well, how about the gals talking about the guys like we are success toys? I mean, really, that's what it boils down to. I mean, men see, by and large, men see the gals as sex objects, and we are seen as success objects. I mean...
For the record, I'd rather be seen as a success object than a sex object. And also, I've never come across a group of women talking about men at all, let alone as objects.
I'm not saying it's pretty, but it happens. It goes on, it says, usually this alone doesn't stop girls from dating guys or even adoring them. However, if they hear too much, they start losing respect for men altogether. In extreme cases, women end up resenting men and assuming they all hate men. We're not all that way. Just the same as not all women are the devil either.
Are you sure you believe that? Because your channel tells a different story.
A lot of you guys aren't going to want me. A lot of you guys are like, SSM, what are you talking about? No, I say this all the time. I'm middle of the road, guys. I'm sure a lot of you watching regularly picked up on this. A lot of channels are quite extreme in one direction. That's not me. Because I know there are some good ones out there, but sadly it's become less and less.
Let me get this straight. If a woman has traumatic experiences happen to her, she can't hate men. But it's okay for you to further disdain for women, to further the dehumanization of women, just so long as no one says they hate women? Because that is essentially what you are doing. When you solicit your subscribers to send you stories about women behaving badly, and that is all you post, no. You are furthering, if not a hatred for women, a disdain for women, which can lead to hatred of women when you stop thinking of them as people.
Women often learn to hate men when they start noticing men correcting them on things they should keep their mouths shut about. True story, I had a guy tell me that period pains aren't that bad. I kind of looked at him like lobsters were crawling out of his ears, and then asked him about when his last period was. He sputtered and said something about me being sensitive. Well, that's just stupid. No guy knows what it's like for a woman to go through that. So what the hell does he know? So he's a jackass, and I agree. And there are other things that guys don't quite get with the gals experience physically, and they are jackasses for saying so. However, when a guy may say that a woman may be overreacting about something, or getting too emotional, or things like that, then that's a different ballgame. This is a phenomenon that most women experience on a fairly regular basis. For reasons beyond my understanding, men seem to want to minimize women's issues or even tell us what we're experiencing. Again, back to the whole, sometimes they overreact and they're being ridiculous, and sometimes what guys say is warranted.
How did you read that out loud and not realize that's what you're doing?
But is that a reason to hate men, to really hate? You know, go Google the word hate and everything associated with that, and you'll see that that's the most extreme case. There's something uniquely infuriating about seeing people derail conversations, discredit you, and downplay your valid concerns, and downright insult you over things that you know are to be true. That's why gaslighting is abuse, you know. I agree it's abuse. And by how many stories have I done where the guy is being gaslighted? He knows something's up. He knows his girlfriend or wife is cheating. He confronts her on things, and she twists things around and makes him out to be the bad guy. Total gaslighting. So, yeah, guys may do it. And guess what? Women do too. And
Whataboutism at its finest. And yet I'd be willing to bet he did not read the article where she talks about how men come to hate women.
Not cool either way. But stop making us all to be the bad guy hating on all this.
You're the one making this personal, buddy. Nowhere did she say all men do this. Nowhere did she say all women should hate men. She's just giving some reasons why some women might come to hate men. And she also did a sister article, which for some reason he is pretending does not exist, and when he briefly mentioned it, he scoffed at it. Maybe in this guy's world, trying to give him some I'm trying to give him some benefit of the doubt, so maybe in his world there is never any reason to hate people. But the fact is that there are men who hate women and women who hate men, and it's important to understand why that is.
Unsurprisingly, women who don't feel like men listen to them or care what they have to say often start to resent the entire gender. It might not be fair because not all men, but it is what it is since most men don't call others out on it. Yes, finally she said it's not all men. But you're not going to have guys pretty much calling other guys out on something like that.
Why? I mean, you don't have to seek it out to publicly condemn every bad action that's ever been taken by a man, but if you see something, you should say something.
She says, finally, some women feel like men have exploited them. Oh, because men are never exploited for resources, or money, or free dates, or free meals, or free drinks?
There is a big difference between being exploited for a free drink and being used for sex.
Let's come on here. We often talk about how men feel like women only use them for money. But this is definitely a two-way street. Women often feel like men use them too. Most of the time it appears when a guy swears he wants to date a girl, then ghosts the moment they have sex. It happens once, okay. He's a jerk. Twice, okay, you're starting to get leery. A ton of times when you made a point of trying to vet guys, well, eventually girls start to feel that all men want is to use them, be it for sex, labor, or a place to stay. Look, there are plenty of guys out there, we call them Chad and Tyrone, that, as the saying goes, pump and dump and all that. And yet, these guys, what she's describing here as jerks, are the ones that so many chase after.
And what is your source for that statement? I have to give him props, though. He managed to take an article about why some women come to hate men and turn it into why it's women's fault when they get abused. That takes a real talent, and I truly admire the way he's staying on message with his channel.
So, and these girls, after living life long enough, dating enough, can pick these guys out a mile away. So again, who's to blame here? The Chad and Tyrones that pretend they're interested, hook up and so forth, or something else?
I'm really not sure what his intention was here, because to me it sounds like he's saying, men, if you read this article, don't change, don't worry, Even if you are an abuser, it's actually her fault because she let you abuse her.
It's an important thing to point out here. She continues, there's a certain thing that happens when a person stops believing that the opposite sex can have good intentions for them. At first, attraction dies. Then, any interest in interacting with them falls apart. Eventually, it just turns into a low simmering hate that gives way to full indifference. Well, it's too bad when it goes that way for anybody. All hate is damaging and it's going to just ruin your life. She says, here are my thoughts on this. At the end of the day, everyone needs to take a closer look at the messages they send out into the world. You never know how people will react to the things you do and how one bad interaction can be the breaking point for the person you talk to. Very true. It's not up to us to tell people who have been abused by a certain gender to continue pretending everything is okay. It's also not up to us to tell women who are regularly oppressed in a system geared against them, let's hold on, honey.
Honey.
It's quite a different world now. To continue to pursue relationships with men if they feel strongly against it. Yeah, well, again, those that end up in those bad situations is terrible. However,
every time he goes so far as to acknowledge that bad situations are terrible, he has to follow it up with a however.
It's time, I think, if it gets so bad, to seek therapy and help. And stop choosing those types of guys over and over again. Those guys are in the wrong for their actions, don't get me wrong, but
there is no but. Just let it go. Accept that some men do horrible things.
We got to some accountability. People do make mistakes. It's like I said before, when guys keep choosing the same type of women over and over again that are awful to them and take advantage of them.
You shame the person that takes advantage of people, not the person that's being taken advantage of.
Says, my advice to the ladies, if you don't like men, don't date them. It will turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy of failure. But please, for your own sake, it may be time to do some self-care and get some therapy for all you've been through. You owe yourself. Well, okay, we can agree on that finally. Yes, go get some therapy. Go get some self-care. Yes, we're walking around hating people all the time. But my biggest issue is just putting all men in this box that we're all this way. That's bullshit. Okay?
Except she never said that was how all men are, nor did she say she agreed with anything in that article. She was simply looking for reasons why some women come to hate men. You are the one that took it and ran with that interpretation of it.
Okay? Most guys are really good guys out there. And also the women often chase these guys that are low lives and do all these types of things. And they turn away and dump the guys that are actually good guys.
So again, it's very interesting because throughout this video he keeps saying, but not all men do this, whilst acting as though all women hate men and for those reasons. For one, though he acts as though this was what she was saying, at no point did the article say this was why women should hate men. It just explains reasons why some women might hate men. And she wrote an article about reasons why men might hate women as well. Now, though he's so flippant about it, let's look at what people who actually study domestic violence say. When it is a viable option, it is best for victims to do what they can to escape their abusers. However, this is not the case in all situations. Abusers repeatedly go to extremes to prevent the victim from leaving. In fact, leaving an abuser is the most dangerous time for a victim of domestic violence. One study found in interviews with men who have killed their wives that either threats of separation by their partner or actual separations were most often the precipitating events that led to the murder. A victim's reasons for staying with their abusers are extremely complex and, in most cases, are based on the reality that their abuser will follow through with the threats they have used to keep them trapped. And as for the pattern of abusive relationships that he just so casually dismisses, when we experience interpersonal trauma, whether physical, emotional, sexual, or spiritual, we often lose our sense of self. The abuse becomes part of our story and is deeply internalized. She says that when offenders are also caregivers, victims most often blame themselves. The idea that we are loved as we are being abused, or that we are being abused because we are loved, can become a template for the way we relate to the world and ourselves. So, if a woman grows up with a model of relationships that involve abuse, anger, or shame, will she believe that she deserves a different kind of relationship? Or might she believe that a relationship based on support and love simply does not exist? Therapy is absolutely a good recommendation, but by being so dismissive, he's furthering the notion that it's so easy to escape from domestic abuse situations, and that women just like bad boys. If a woman is repeatedly entering abusive relationships, it's not because she likes being abused. It's because she thinks that's what she deserves. Nowhere in the article does the author say it's good or healthy to hate men. In fact, she recommends therapy. So why did he feel the need to make this video? His message seems to be that not all men are this way, and women need to take responsibility for getting into abusive relationships. Why can't he allow women to have trauma? His channel is all about his subscribers sending in stories about how awful they've been treated by women. So shouldn't he be saying that they need to take responsibility for being in those bad relationships? Instead, his channel revels in tales of women behaving badly. And there's no disclaimer about how most women aren't like that. This could have been a discussion, but instead he just dismisses the article as ridiculous and extreme. Anyway, I decided to try an experiment and posted "Not all women are like that" on one of his videos. The responses were pretty much as I expected. Okay, but there are plenty of women like her, if not a majority. More than enough. More are than aren't. Actually, it is the opposite. It is rare to find a woman who is not going to give people some kind of issue either exactly or similar to the story. A lot of women are walking around thinking they can't be held accountable for bad behavior, Why do you think this channel has so many stories of this bad behavior? Because it is not shown a lot to the public on a bigger stage, so channels like SSM have to do it to show that these women are abundant in number and not a small skewed stat like you think they are. It's definitely not a small number. That's why marriages in the US have dropped to 6.5 per 1,000. In Denmark, it's fallen off a cliff and birth rates have crashed for good reason. About time. There needs to be a severe correction so that the rules can be rewritten. Yes, true, but most marriages are exactly like that. Ah, bless your little heart. Actually, almost all are. We don't have too many statistics to work with. However, there are billions of people in this world. A few million bad women is enough to really raise awareness and warn men to be very careful. If the divorce rate is around 50%, that has to raise some red flags. You don't know what most women are like. What anyone can say with absolute certainty is that there are women like that, and that's enough. Yes, they are, unfortunately. Especially the ones who say they're not. It's because there are no restraints on their behavior, unlike in previous eras. Ha 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 ha. Yes, they are. But hey, at least I got 2 likes. Alright, and that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as possible considering the content. Have a great day, and I will see you next week. Bye!